And I think that's where confidence really gets built, is building trust in ourselves to say, okay, I'm going to
Totally.
get out of my comfort zone. This is going to be really scary. And then to look back on it and be proud of yourself and be like, I did that. I can do this thing next that's feeling really uncomfortable and get there. And it's going
Yeah.
to work out. And like, feel like we have to intentionally get ourselves out of that comfort bubble to build
Yeah.
that self-trust and that confidence. Otherwise, we will stay in that place that we're not truly happy, but we feel like that's all there is.
Hello, hello, everyone. Welcome back to another awesome episode of High Vibin' It. We are really excited to speak to Miss Helen today because it hasn't lined up the last couple of times. We finally got her here. It's happening. Conversation's going to be magical. We don't even know what it's going to be about yet. We're just flowing in real time. But to introduce you guys to Helen, if you don't already know who she is, Helen Denham helps women heal at a subconscious level so they can initiate radical change from a place of peace. We love that. She's also the host of the Lifted podcast, which Lindsay has been on, so you should go check out that episode. And she is a mentor and guide for women. So, Helen, thanks for being here.
Oh, thank you, Kelsey. I'm so happy I get to meet you. And Lindsay, it's good to see you. So we'll just hang out. I'm so happy to be here.
I know this is going to be fun.
Okay, I talk a lot, so I was really trying not to talk through that whole thing, and it was hard. But Helen, I'm so happy to see you, and I love that you're wearing black. I'm wearing black, and it seems like it's very meant to be. Let's
Mhm.
talk about real quick how you kind of got into what you're doing. I know that everybody's story is so nuanced and unique and just deep. So I love getting the story in the beginning of the episode. What brought you to this chair today in your
That's a great
life?
question. I love that question too, because you get so much from just asking somebody like how they got to, this very moment. But you know what? I think it goes back to my exit in a way from the entertainment industry and like this kind of hustle, hustle, hustle mentality in New York City, where I lived for 8 years working in music and trying to pursue modeling and all these things. And it was just something that I felt like I should do and I should fit in that container in a way. And at some point it just started to feel like I was suffocating, and
Mm.
my self-esteem was really low. I wasn't making the progress that I wanted to see, and I was just getting frustrated with that. And so it actually started to happen around, like, I went through a big breakup and kind of my first love ending and everything. And I thought, like, who am I without this person? And I got to take a look at my whole life in general to say, am I really happy with what's going on here? Or would I like to feel a little differently? I just realized how, like, kind of timid, I guess, I was without him. And so I went to Thailand on a solo trip and stayed in Chiang Mai and Pai for a month. And during that stay, it wasn't really touristy season. So those of us that were there really got to feel into the community of Thailand and feel into how they really lived. And it was such a different way of being. And there were so many beautiful monasteries around and nature walks and just a completely different pace. So I found myself just kind of hanging out a lot at monasteries and getting to know, honestly, the monks that were there. And in Thailand, it's kind of a rite of passage. Like, every young man is a monk for a certain amount of time. So it's ingrained in their culture to cultivate this sense of peace throughout their entire life, because they start young. And it just completely changed my perspective on life and my desires and my pillars and my values, and how I wanted to return to New York and how I wanted to feel. So when I got back, I just started to look for places that were meditation studios, started to work with Inscape Meditation, which was this awesome little spot in the Flatiron district. And as somebody who worked there, we were facilitators, but we weren't actually leading the meditations. It was this setup that was audio guided. So we'd be in these kind of interesting, like, one space was called the Dome and the other was like this almost like tree sanctuary in the city. It was funny, but the facilitators would literally just sit there with the students that were coming in just to hold space for them. And then it would be audio guided. So as facilitators, we'd be going through meditations 5 times a day. So we weren't even teaching. We were just meditating for 5 hours a day. So I felt like I came back into some kind of iteration of a monk training and really got to get familiar with stillness and really deeply go inward. So It was that, and I just started to trickle away from the scene that I'd been in and just took a different lens on making music as something that could be healing and didn't have to be like, let's get famous and become a pop star. It was like, let's make music because it feels good. And just regulating my nervous system, moving through all of my, mental health issues with meditation and mindfulness. And I just full on went student mode. And then I guess it just let out from there. I ended up moving out of the city to Topanga, in Los Angeles, but it's like a little mountain village in Los Angeles, and started my own business a few years ago, all focused on this. So that's my long-winded explanation of, kind of my exit out of that mentality into this one, I guess.
So your entrance was an exit. So many of
Yeah.
our guests have that same story, and I feel like even Kelsey and I have that to some extent. Like, you must be exiting the way you were in order to enter into the way you want to be. What mountain area are you talking about? Because the only one I could think of is Silver Lake.
Yeah, it's really not there. So it's Topanga is this really
Oh,
cool.
Topanga.
Yeah,
Did you say
Topanga.
Topanga?
Uh-huh.
Oh, I used to
Maybe I
drive
said it
Topanga
weird.
every single day, Topanga Canyon, and
Yeah.
it is a thing. Have you
It's a
ever
thing.
driven Topanga, Kels?
No.
She's from San Diego, so I just
Oh,
didn't know if
yes.
maybe like you just drove up one day, but yeah, Topanga it was ugh.
My only reference of Topanga is the girl from Boy Meets World. That was like the
Topanga.
first thing that came to mind when you said
Topanga.
that's where you're from.
I
Well,
have
Topanga's,
yeah.
yeah, it's a state park. It's interesting.
Mm.
It's like, so there's all this green space and all these hiking trails. Like, so you have this access to the city and the ocean, but you're in a protected
Yeah.
landscape. So it's just really nature centered.
Sounds
It's
perfect.
beautiful, and it's really weird that it's right there. It's kind of like how I feel about Central Park, like in the middle of the biggest city is just this beautiful like oasis.
Yeah, I remember zooming out of LA on the map and I saw this big green space like next to the ocean. I was like, what is this? And then I found out that Lacey Phillips, who runs To Be Magnetic, I don't know if you guys are familiar
Mm.
with her, but she
Mhm.
lives there. And I thought, maybe I'll just go for a week and just check it out. Cause I've been on a big cross country road trip that took me like 2 months to get across to California from New York. And I thought, well, I'll just stay here for a week and then go back to New York City, but just take a break and go camping and do all these things. And I just fell in love with it. And I stayed for the last 2 years. So
What
that,
I wish for everyone listening is to find something they love and just decide to keep doing it. Like, how cool is that you were like, I like this. This is lighting me up inside. I think I'll do it. Like,
yeah,
I would only assume you didn't come out of the womb like that, or maybe we did, but we just learned the opposite, and we have to come back to that. Just giving ourselves permission to do the thing we want to do, man. It sounds so simple, but it's like one of the hardest things that we can do is do what we
Well,
want.
I think we get trained out of it because there's
Totally.
like this blueprint for how life should be in our society, right? Like the steps that will lead you to success. Like, go to school, get good grades,
Yeah.
go to college, get a job, work 9 to 5, blah, blah, blah. Work your way
Get
up the
married,
ladder.
have kids.
Yeah, it's like, who says there's one blueprint when there's billions of different people and everyone has their own soul blueprint and their own purpose and their own work-life balance and their own everything, their own passions, their own talents, their own gifts. Like, it doesn't make sense that there's a one size fits all when people are so unique, right? So
Well,
then we get brainwashed into like, oh, I think I'll try this because I don't really know myself because they told me this is what I should want and this is what I should do. And
yeah.
then you have to unlearn so
Well,
you can
and
really learn. And I think that's where the meditation and the stillness comes in, is so you can hear yourself and feel yourself and know what you like and what you want.
And what a stark contrast where in Thailand, they're literally like trained first, before anything, let's find some peace. Like, day one,
yes,
let's find some peace. Imagine how different America, or really a lot of these first world countries, would feel if they were taught that first. We're just not. It's
yeah,
the last thing you're taught if you know to search it out. Like, only if you have that knowing that maybe I should figure this out, because ain't nobody going to teach me this. I got to teach myself or find somebody who knows. So
yeah.
it's such a big difference. And how cool it is that you were able to see, oh my gosh, there's another way of being that is
Mhm.
beautiful and comfortable. And I wish that on everybody in their own way, to
Yeah.
find whatever it is they need that brings them that peace.
Totally. And I think the biggest thing, which we briefly touched on was that America is extremely status driven.
Yeah.
Everything that I was doing was like, how can I be more popular? How can I be more desirable? All these things, a lot for the male gaze as well. And this experience traveling was much more about unity, consciousness, and existence, that we exist as a collective and we're not in competition, and we're not, it's an American concept. I think that we've got it a little backward here. And so it was definitely a shift of being, just about me as an individual to being of service. So it completely shifted my brain around how I want to show up in the world and to just be of service, and to really get down to it. I think as young women, especially when we grow up with all these tabloids, it's like pushed into our heads that we need to, of course, look a certain way, but also like that fame is something to crave and to
Right.
chase and to go after. And you're not there until you made it big. At least that was in my mind, especially being interested in the arts. And that was the unlearning for me, was like, this is not what it's about. And when you actually look at people who are under a microscope like that, that is just, it's like torture, to be honest. And I
Yes.
think that's becoming more and more apparent now as people are being more transparent about what fame is really like and that level of attention. And I just realized I wanted to be safe and I wanted to be happy. And so figuring out what the deepest answers there were, like, how do I feel safe? Where do I feel the happiest? How can I cultivate that more? And that really led me to much more happiness than status did.
I love
Word.
that.
Yeah. I think especially
Yes.
it's interesting that you ended up in LA when you were like on your anti-status mission. It's
Well,
kind
I
of
was
like
almost
ironic.
never, it is ironic, but I was almost never in the city because I wanted
Mm,
access to it. But Topanga, like, if you've driven through it, it's like one boulevard that goes from the ocean, like the Malibu ocean line, into the valley. So you could live your whole life in Topanga and never go into the city and still be in
Yep.
LA, weirdly.
mm,
Like, so
got
my
it.
trips were north. It was like I would only go into like Santa Monica and Venice and maybe some parties here and there if I really felt like a kick to do it. But otherwise, I'd be going to Big Sur and Joshua Tree and Yosemite on
Mhm.
camping trips. And that's what I really loved about California. Was that central access. But I'm with you. No, I'm like, now I'm actually in Maine right now, deciding how I want to toggle between Maine and New York City, because I feel like at this point, it's like quality of life over everything. Like that fresh
Mhm.
air is like non-negotiable for me anymore. So it's figuring out that harmony as well.
Yeah, I like that you
Yeah.
said that because I'm always not pushing it, but reminding people that quality of life is the most
Yeah.
important thing. Because, like, personally for me, I've been suicidal. So, anyone who's been suicidal can tell you that quality of life is number one. If you don't have
Mhm.
quality of life, you don't even want to live, period. That is crazy because people make it so much about survival, especially during the pandemic, right? Like, oh, the most important thing is to survive. No, it's actually not. That's actually not our number one priority. The most important thing to us is quality of life, which is why we do this show, which is why we do this work, which is why we want to bring light and healing to the world. Because without quality of life, we have nothing.
What do you
It's
got?
so much better to
Yeah.
focus on building quality and finding out what that means to you. And I think your story is a really beautiful demonstration of you, exploring to see what brings the most quality to your life and what lights you up the most.
I'm with you, Kelsey, and thank you for saying that, because I think like the fact that you were suicidal, I was too, is very common. And all these taboo
Mhm.
subjects that we're not talking about are starting to be talked about a lot more. And I really appreciate that, because it brings visibility to something that is so hard and so isolating for most people, that to talk about it, I think, is really important, and to be examples of the other side, because there are two people right now that have been, this close to death, and we changed our lives, and I'm really happy. I can honestly really say that. I feel like my affirmation now every morning is I live in heaven on earth, and I've really started to believe that. When I look outside, I'm like, this is heaven on earth. Life is really,
Mhm.
really good. And I would never have believed that that was even possible as an 18 or 20-year-old. Like, and it's
Right?
just amazing what can change.
Teens are hard. Young adulthood sucks in some
Yeah.
ways. Because that was like when I went through my most depressive episode. First spiritual awakening too was like in 17 to 21. it was a little rough. So any youngins listening out there, if you're going through a
Yeah.
tough time, just know that it can get better. It gets better. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely had I was never that I can remember, I was never suicidal. I do have a lot of those around me that have been, and you know, as some of the listeners will know, there are some childhood stories of like me having to stop certain parents from doing certain things to themselves. And so I grew up around this idea of like protect, protect, protect from a very, very young age. So I don't think I even, I mean, for whatever reason, it never occurred to me. But when I had my situation when I was like 19, I was like, I don't want to be here. And that was Michigan. I don't want to be here. I don't want to marry this guy. I don't want to have kids and live in a small town and do I knew I was not living my purpose. And so I just effed off to California. That's what I did.
Oh,
I was like, I can't figure out my life. I'm just going to go to California. I was 20 years old. I didn't know which way was up or what anything was. Nothing made sense, but I was like, I found roommates online. I got an apartment with a student loan that I got out, and I was like, I'm going to figure it out. I will figure it out. And you know what? I figured it out because that's the great thing about trauma, I guess, is that it allows you to figure stuff out on your own because you really, that's you are your only, not your only, but you are your strongest supporter at the end of the day, hopefully. And when you can find that relationship with yourself and know, like, no matter what, I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to figure it out and be happy. Maybe I won't be happy every day, but I'm going to do my best to be happy for as many days as I can and whatever that means for you. And I think for the hardest part for people is when you grow up in a society where you're constantly being told what's good for you, what you should like, what you should want, what you should do, where do you start to figure out what you like? You know what I mean? And I think that is we are all three of us and a lot of the listeners, hopefully, really good testaments to like if you want it, you can have it. There's a way to get whatever you want. You just need to figure out what it is you want. And there's no wrong answer there. It's just giving yourself permission to ask the dang question in the in the first place.
yeah. And what I love about your story, Lindsay, too, is you had the courage to take a leap of faith and you went for it. And I think that's where confidence really gets built, is building trust in ourselves to say, okay, I'm going to
Totally.
get out of my comfort zone. This is going to be really scary. And then to look back on it and be proud of yourself and be like, I did that. I can do this thing next that's feeling really uncomfortable and get there. And it's going
Yeah.
to work out. And like, feel like we have to intentionally get ourselves out of that comfort bubble to build
Yeah.
that self-trust and that confidence. Otherwise, we will stay in that place that we're not truly happy, but we feel like that's all there is. But there is something else. We just have to be,
Yeah. And
brave
and I
enough to do it. Hmm.
I do want to point out as well, like a little bit of a perspective shift when it comes to getting out of your comfort zone, when it comes to giving yourself permission to do the hard thing and figure out what you want and what would fulfill you. What a gift that our ancestors never had. Like, I can't not think about that because I'm so into like ancestral work and just genealogy and everything involving like everyone who came before me and before us. Generations of women who never thought about themselves because they couldn't. Generations of men whose only job was to protect their family. Who cares how I'm feeling? Who cares about my emotions, right? Like, what a gift we're given right now to just figure out why we're upset, why
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
don't like what's going on. What a gift
Right.
that is. And then when you know that, or when you're asking those questions, like, wow, this is what our ancestors wanted, this right here, and we get to live it. So, yeah, it's hard. Yeah, it's painful. Yeah, it hurts sometimes. But oh my God, what a beautiful gift we are given. And why wouldn't you do it at that point? You know what I mean? Sorry, I'll get down
Don't be
off my
No, you're
sorry.
soapbox.
It's
so
a
you're
great
so
thought.
right.
I got real passionate for a second.
It's also like the age we're in the age of Aquarius, which is like the breaker of chains.
Kelsey's an
So there.
Aquarius, so she's doing a
Oh,
dance.
Well, also,
yes.
my fiance and I are just really passionate about the age of Aquarius. So every time someone says Age of Aquarius, I hear the song
She
Age
just
of
sings it.
Aquarius. So I was just dancing in my head to that song.
Yes. I think it makes sense that a lot of us feel like black sheep in the family as
Mhm.
well. And I just interviewed an astrologer, Ocean, who's awesome. She was just talking about when we're looking at Saturn returns, noticing where Saturn is in your chart. And my Saturn is in Aquarius, which is like breaker of change is the reason why I feel like the black sheep. But for those listening, if you want to look up, where Saturn falls in your chart, that's
Mm,
where you're being called to explore your biggest soul lesson and experience kind of the most discomfort intentionally to grow and to break those ancestral patterns. I think
yeah.
this is like evolution. We're experiencing evolution right before our eyes, like really fast. So yeah, it is
Yeah.
different, but that's a good perspective to keep in mind, like what a blessing it is that we get to do the exploration and the work.
Yeah.
Or we don't have to. If you are feeling fine at a 9 to 5 job, great, but there are a
Right.
lot of options.
There's so many options, and at least ask the question of, do I want to explore those? If the answer is no, wonderful. If the answer is yes, wonderful. Like, you get to decide that. We never there are people who never really got to decide that. And I always want to think about that, because I could easily get stuck in my own bubble of like, oh, it's too hard, because it is. It is hard. No matter
Mhm.
what, being a human is hard. But like, we have so many more options, and I think it's important to recognize that.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, that's the simple beauty of gratitude as well. That is like one of the best tools I feel like just for raising our
Yeah.
vibration and feeling happier. It's like, what are we grateful for? And we start to realize like how good life really is. That's where the choice comes in, I think. Either we can make a list of what's going wrong and what we can complain about, or we can start to take a look at what's going really well. What are we proud of
Yeah.
ourselves for? What are we looking forward to? Which is part of my, morning practice now, is to just do simple gratitude, simple I am statements, and then future self scripting and getting into that feeling of it already happening and feeling gratitude in advance for how great life is even about to get.
Word.
Beautiful.
I have
Mhm.
a fun game. Let's do a gratitude
I was
roundtable.
just gonna say that. Oh, you
Yes.
read my mind.
We're always doing roundtables. Well, especially on the Patreon. So we do
Yeah.
extended episodes every week, and we usually get real casual on the Patreon and go into some
Super
stories and stuff.
cash.
But I think it'd be fun to do it now. Why not? We're on the topic of gratitude. Gratitude's something that helped pull me out of my depressive
Mm-hmm.
episode and like help me become this teacher. And I really do believe that it just raises your vibration so quickly and
Yeah.
efficiently. It's like the ultimate, not bypass, but it is a hack for sure, a vibrational hack. So
Yeah.
let's start. Lindsay, I'm gonna pick on you,
I
and then
knew
we'll
it.
go Helen, and then I'll go next.
Well, since I'm in the topic of ancestral stuff, which everybody knows I love, I am for one going to be grateful that I will never be a slave if somebody raids my village and takes me. Okay,
That's a
at
good
least
one.
as far as I know, right? As far as we know, knock on wood. It's not even a possibility. All my children are healthy. I don't have to die giving birth. I mean, I know that it's still very risky, but I'm grateful that I never had to deal with that. Just, living now, there's a lot of problems. My biggest thing is that, you know what? I'm healthy, my family's healthy. And I know it's probably because I have a lot of past lives where my family wasn't healthy. Like, that's a huge thing for me. So it's one of the very first things I always go to, like the simple matter of like, I get to wake up and see my kids every single day and decide what to do for fun every single day, because we don't have to constantly be working in the fields for food.
Yes.
I know I went super existential, but
That
that's
was
just,
really
you know what I
deep, but
mean?
I liked it.
Super deep, but like, we got to recognize that
Yeah.
stuff. It hasn't always been easy, and that's still in your DNA. It's still there. So it's important to acknowledge it and recognize that, oh my gosh, it gets to be so much better today.
Oh, I
Sorry.
love that,
You
Lindsay.
guys go now.
No, that's so good. That's just really
Really good.
good perspective to have. I similarly am grateful for especially the women in my family. All of them have really amazing green thumbs. So they've been teaching me
Mm,
about the indigenous plants we have around and gardening. And we all spent the day like weeding together and my sisters and I. And it was like so cathartic to like put my phone down and just like get my hands in the earth for a little
yes.
while. And I'm just really grateful for the pace that I'm at all of a sudden. I just moved out of kind of a chaotic environment into like this big breath of fresh air. So I'm really grateful for a new chapter and for the well-being of my family and for a reconnection to nature, honestly, and just like a brighter future, I feel like. So I'm feeling optimistic and deeply grateful for that. And community and the teachers that we have access to now. Like, I feel like if I ever want to learn anything, we've got everything available to us. If I
Yeah.
want to learn, hypnosis, I can go to Lindsay, or, if I want to learn quantum healing or anything, like it's just, we have a wealth of knowledge all around us. So, which really gets my Gemini moon going. Like knowledge. Yes.
I
So
love
that's
that.
me. Mhm.
Yay. Congrats on living an awesome life. Happy for you.
Sounds
So
amazing.
happy for us. Look at how far we've come. I love this. Let's see. For me, I'm really grateful that recently I have a lot more space. Similarly, I'm coming out of a very busy, intense, pressure-filled season, and I'm very thankful to not be in that and to be on the other side of that and just have space and time. Like, I have an abundance of time. I have an abundance of freedom, an abundance of creativity, and I'm just living for it right now. And top of mind, I was just in Miami this weekend and it was so fun. And every single moment of every day, I was like, I'm living my best life ever. And I was like eating all the best food. And I was just at the beach soaking up the sun. And I was with the love of my life. And we were having so much fun. And I was just like, this is everything. And it was so funny because while we were flying there, Jeff was like closing all these deals at his work because I've been doing a lot of money meditation, manifesting work on the side, which this always happens every time. So I haven't been working as much or as hard, but I just kind of didn't give it to him, but I was like, we can have more money come in through him. He's working. He's in the hustle mode. That's cool. And so as we were flying there, he was closing all these deals, making all these commissions. I was like, we need to go on vacation more often. Like, this is great. Everything was just
Isn't that
flowing.
funny?
I was having so many good ideas. And oh my gosh, it was just a time. So I'm
Re-
really just thankful to be alive and have such an awesome life, honestly.
Kelsey,
I
real
love
quick,
that.
you bring up such an amazing point because we always think, even the best of us always think that I can't have fun until this happens, or I can't be whatever until this happens. But isn't it funny, heavy sarcasm here, how once you start having fun, things happen? It's not the other way around, but we think it is. We always think it is. Even though we do this work and we talk to people every day who have the same stories, in the back of our minds, it's so deeply ingrained that I must do this before I can do this. We must have money before we go on a trip. We must, whatever. Just have fun and see what happens, because 99% of the time, the doors will open to your manifestations when you start being the thing that you're hoping to get when you get the manifestation.
Yeah. And it was fun because it was kind of like a spontaneous trip. I mean, I've been having the urge to go to Miami for a while because I had only been for like a day one time when I was younger going on a cruise. But Jeff's little brother was playing a football game there. And so we went for the game and then we were like, oh, let's, extend our stay, make a little vacation out of it. And oh my gosh, love a good
So
impromptu
good.
vacation.
That's
Yes.
amazing.
So yeah, grateful. Very, very
Mhm.
grateful.
Yeah, and to your point, Lindsay, like feeling really good before we even have it, I think is so key, because what we're even like calling in and whatever we're manifesting usually is just about a feeling. Like,
Mhm.
how do we want to feel? Like, if I want to make a lot of money, it's really that feeling of safety and freedom that I really want. So how can I activate safety and freedom now? Well, I can go, I love camping. I love that, makes me feel really free. I get off the grid, I leave my phone behind, I see the most beautiful places in nature, and that fulfills it. So I actually leave that hustle mentality behind, and then it's just more fun, and then I call in money because I'm just in a great mood.
Yes.
Mhm.
Whatever you want, whoever's listening. I always talk to the listeners like every time. I'm like talking directly to them, but whatever you want, just have fun. You know what I mean?
It's a
So,
brilliant question
it
to
sounds
ask.
so easy.
What is the feeling that I'm going for, and how can I embody it and get into that space now? And also, another question you can ask from the reverse side of the coin is, what's stopping me from feeling
Yeah.
this way? And don't say it's because you don't have your manifestation. That is such a cop out. I
You
hate
know
when
what it's
people do
going to
that.
be every time. Yeah, it's going
Really
to
be
be.
honest with yourself. Like, what is stopping me from feeling this way? And usually,
It's
like
yourself.
99% of the time, it's some conditional way of
Yeah.
living that you're
Yeah.
practicing where I'm not going to let myself feel this until this, because you're using your feelings as carrot on a stick motivation. But
Mhm.
I've never really seen that work for people in the long term.
No. And it
Well,
doesn't
it's
even
like,
feel good at the time. Like
No.
it doesn't even feel good. Like, I don't
I
know.
think that requires like big time self-honesty and self-responsibility and self-reliance, which can be sometimes difficult to admit that maybe there could have been more done, or, oh, I could have been feeling good all along, but that's okay. That's where like the compassion comes into the work and we get to be gentle with ourselves. And then I think, people sometimes when we're setting goals, it's really frustrating to set a goal that's like 5 years out because it seems unattainable. So I always tell my clients, let's just start with like, how do you want to feel this week? What can you do this week or today that would feel better? Like just one step in front of the other. It does not need to be some big 5-year plan. You can have that idea in mind, but if we just, the threshold for people really getting goals achieved is usually 3 to 6 months. Like that's really as
Mhm.
far out as it typically works for people, which seems a lot more manageable because we're like, oh, 3 months is not that far along. I can definitely, launch a podcast in 3 months, or I can definitely, save money for a trip, or I
Mhm.
can definitely like get my fitness in shape in that much time. But if you extend it to a year, it's just too big. So that seems to have helped me too with like manifesting requires the law of action. So how can we like harness that
Yes.
so it's easier to feel into?
Thank you. We
I
say
like
that a
the
lot on
break
the
it down.
podcast. Yeah. We say that a lot on the podcast that you also need to take action. Like I would hate for anybody to listen to us and be like, so does that mean I just wish it? Like no, no, I don't think we've ever said that. We would never say that. You need action. But what is the action? How does the action feel is really, really important as well.
Well, and
Mhm.
also as I'm looking at the word in a new way for a first time from someone who's written the word manifesting and manifestation probably a billion times so far in my career, I'm just thinking about what we're saying and looking at the man part. Why would it have man in it if we weren't supposed to like get down and dirty in the physical and like use our bodies to help bring forth these things? It would be like energy festing instead of like manifesting, you know?
I think maybe it's coming from I don't know. I now I'm interested to see the etymology of the word.
Yeah, manifesting. I don't know why I feel like
Man,
like has
manos,
something to do with
hands.
hands. Yeah.
Mhm.
Right.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Manos.
But
I
yes, very good point. Like we
That's such a
gotta
good point.
it's a
Yeah.
co-creative process with the universe. It's not wishing and then it dropping in your lap. Like if that happens, tell me what you're doing because that is just not the way. It's a co-creative process. You also have to take action. And wouldn't you want to? Like people in general are very action 3D physically driven anyway. And in fact, the problem usually is doing too much. So to swing the other way and be like, I'm just not going to do anything. It's just
Have you
very
guys
not
noticed
real.
that people literally want to do nothing? This is like a movement that's spreading. Like people don't want to work, people
I
don't want to
have
try, people don't want to put effort. Like I'm trying to wrap my head around like, okay, so if you're not doing any of those things, like how do you want to spend your time? Like do you think money is going to fall from the sky and you're just going to live your best life on a yacht? Like I don't understand.
yeah.
That can only be fun for so long.
Yeah,
Mhm.
and again, I would ask them, "Well, does that feel like? Doing nothing. What is the feeling you're trying to get to? Because it's not doing nothing. It's the feeling you get when you think you're gonna get it by doing nothing, you know? It's usually probably peace and freedom and free time. Well, you can have that and still do stuff, and you're gonna want to. I totally agree. Like, nobody is going to be satisfied doing nothing. Doing what you want would be nice. I think that a lot of people want that, but doing nothing?